my name's Alan. I own a marketing and public relations agency. I can take this off now. And I am here to help you meet the press today. We've got three great reporters that I've worked with for a number of years over the time. Let's go ahead and give a round of applause for Martin Comas from the Orlando Sentinel. Jeff Levkulich from WFTV Channel 9. And Diane Sears, the editor and publisher of I4 Business Magazine. If you guys could please come on up to the stage. Welcome to the folks on Zoom. Hopefully in just a little bit, we'll have an opportunity for you folks on Zoom to be able to ask some questions as well. So get those ready. We're going to start out. Everybody's got their mask on, but you can take your mask off if you want to spread out a little bit more. You can, absolutely. So let's start out with an interesting question. What is it like to actually do your job in a pandemic? Jeff, why don't you go ahead and start? Because, you know, we see you on TV every night in the pandemic.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having us here. A little early, but not too early. About 15 minutes for school that I have to get up for, but that's all right. What's it like to work in a pandemic? It's a little bit different, not much different for me. I've been doing the same thing for a number of years here at the station. Pretty much, I work from home since I live in Seminole County. My photographer lives 5 minutes away from me. He picks me up in the morning and we just go from there. So our job, my job hasn't changed much. But a number of the reporters in the station, they are all working from home, which is something new to them. I get a lot more laundry done, but but that's about it. That's pretty much how it's changed. The other thing that's changed for us is because we're TV, a lot of people don't want to do in-person interviews, so we do a lot of Zoom interviews nowadays, and that's pretty much the biggest change for us.
Martin, why don't you live in Seminole County as well? So,
hi, yeah, I do, and I've been pretty fortunate. The Sentinel's given me the opportunity to work from home for the past 3 years, so I've gotten pretty accustomed to it. I cover mostly county government, so most of my work is really not really getting out into the community as much. It's more talking to people on the phone. But the Sentinel has been really generous for us. They've been really, you know, they've really looked out for us. They've given us all N95 masks. They've given us gloves, and they told us that, you know, if you really don't feel comfortable going out, you know, try not to. But, you know, a big part of the job as a journalist and as being in the media is getting out into the community. And so that is something that there is kind of a, you know, balancing there.
Diane?
Well, our job hasn't, our magazine hasn't changed that much. We all work from home anyway. In fact, our team of 7, all of us work remotely. Can you hear me? Can't hear me. Now can you hear me? No. Is there an on button? Okay. How about that? Okay, good. All right, I'll start over. There's always someone, and you know, usually it's been, hey, you're on mute, you're on mute. So, you know, I'm just following the trend. So we all at I4 Business work remotely anyway. And for those of you who haven't seen I4 Business, I brought a couple of copies up here at the front table. We all work remotely anyway. In fact, our designer is in Wyoming, and our managing editor goes back and forth between Brevard County and Nashville. So we're all remote, and we do everything remotely except for when we're out in the community like this. Our biggest issue has been having events ourselves. So we had a really cool live event, and we decided to do it all on Zoom. And I know Maritza Martinez here from UCF. We had Chair Bev C, who was in, she was our big award winner. And I wanted people who were the award winners to be able to see the audience clapping. So instead of doing it in a format where it was a webinar and delivering it that way, we had everyone on one big Zoom meeting. And so that was crazy. So we're trying some crazy things, and I'm sure all of you all are too.
So let's go back before the pandemic, or just at any other time. What constitutes a great story for you? Martin, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Sure. The things that I tend to look at in what I consider a great story is something that really has not just a broad appeal to the whole community. The Orlando Sentinel is distributed not just in Seminole County, but it is all throughout Central Florida. So one thing I always try to keep in mind is when I do write a story is just mostly how will this, how does this thing that I'm writing about impact people's lives, not just here in this community, here in Seminole County, but throughout the whole Central Florida region. And also the other thing that I always like to read in a newspaper is, or even if I watch something on Channel 9 News or any of the other medias, is something that really has kind of like a wow factor to it. It's like, wow, that's really interesting. I really didn't, that this was going on. I remember when I was in college many, many years ago, and one of the things, I took a television news writing class, and I don't know if you guys follow this theory, but I remember the professor was also used to work for Channel 2 News back in the 1970s and 80s. And he said one thing that really constitutes a really good story for a journalist and for a reporter is, imagine that your next door neighbor is busy doing something, either making dinner or maybe taking a shower, doing something. And you run over to your next door neighbor's house, you knock on the door, you ring the doorbell, he stops what he's doing and he answers the door and you say, hey, guess what happened? This happened. Now, what's your neighbor's reaction going to be? Is it going to be, well, you stopped me from, doing this important thing to tell me this? Or, oh, wow, well, that's really interesting. So that's something that I've always, kept in mind is just how, this story is really the kind of appeal it would have throughout the whole Central Florida community.
My college professor in journalism called those G. Martha stories because they were the stories that, as you're reading at the kitchen table, the guy turns to his wife and goes, "Gee, Martha, did you see this?" That was the name of that story.
Exactly. So, and if Martha sits there and says, "Well, why are you bothering me with?" So
right.
That's always something that I always try to keep the reader in mind and say, and I always think about the reader just saying, and I always, whenever I write a story, I try to put up pretty high up in the story, second or third graph, is try to kind of like give the idea of why this is important to the person reading the story.
Diane?
Our magazine is a little different, and I worked for the Orlando Sentinel for 9 years. I worked for Florida Trend for 9 years. I've watched Channel 9 for 100 years, and I've read OBJ, where you used to work, Alan, for a long time. We look for stories that are about leadership in the community. So we're called Orlando's Leadership Connection, and we look for stories that tell the why behind why people are doing things, why leaders are doing great things out there in the community. So it's a little bit different. And we also look for the stories that affect the most number of people. So the leaders who are doing things that make the biggest difference in the community.
Jeff?
Yeah, I would echo what they are saying too. We tend to look for broad appeal, how many people it affects. Also, we look for the wow factor, as Martin said. Because we're television, we are news, but we got to entertain people to keep them to get them to keep watching. So a lot of times the crime stories are sort of a wow factor, or it might be your government spent this on what? That's a wow factor. But a lot of times it has to do with how many people is it going to affect in TV news. That's what we look for. And during the pandemic, our news has sort of changed. We used to be more investigative. Now we've become more informative because people like to keep updated on the pandemic and COVID and the vaccines and everything like that. So we've sort of changed a little bit, but maybe afterwards we'll go back.
So, I haven't been a reporter since the 90s, but I still remember lots of stories. One of them, I covered the Moscow Circus when they got stuck here in Orlando. Maybe you guys been around for a long time. They're fishing in their apartment ponds because they had no money, didn't know how to work the air conditioning. Such a great story. What's the one most memorable story over your career that you can pinpoint on? And Jeff, I'm going to start with you.
Tough one. I've been doing this for a little over 20 years, and I've seen a lot. I was in Shanksville during 9/11, covering that for the TV station I worked for. I covered Pulse in the morning. I was there talking to grieving mothers. Probably the one story that sticks out of my mind, though, is this story that I did before I came here. It actually got me hired here, and I didn't even apply for this job. I had found a murder weapon, and they found who did it, and he went away for life because of the knife that I found, and I guess an eyewitness that maybe saw him at the scene put them together. But that's probably my most memorable thing, was finding that weapon. And this was like hours after police cleared a crime scene. It was literally laying right outside the house by a fan, like an air conditioning unit. It's true.
Were you
you're in the
doing
wrong-
a stand-up there, and you look down and there it is?
Well, it was sort of weird because the police we didn't cover it when it happened, so there was no scene, there was no police. I'm talking to the neighbor, and I said, can we walk back, use your driveway to walk back and get video of the basement door, because it happened in the basement of the house. And he said, yeah. So he took us back, and we were walking back, and the sun hit this metal object that was sticking out of the ground by the air conditioning. And I said, hey, that looks like a knife. And he goes, yeah, I cut the grass just the other day. That knife was not there. And so we picked it up. I didn't pick it up, but I called the police, and they came, picked it up, and sure enough, it was the murder weapon. It's sort of a crazy story, but
Diane, top that.
Oh, that's tough. I dropped the mic. That's a tough one.
Or should we just move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Game over.
No, I would have to say the shuttle Challenger explosion. I was in my first job out of college. I was at Florida Today newspaper, and I had been the editor on the special section that profiled each one of the astronauts. So, I remember sitting at home on my sofa with my cat cuddled up next to me and reading all the bios and making sure everything was spelled right and all that. And so I knew the bios intimately. So when that happened, I was in bed asleep. And if you remember, it was like 11 in the morning. I had worked the night shift, and we had this horrible thing we used to say as reporters when we left. You were always on call during a shuttle launch over there. And we'd say, I'll see you tomorrow, unless the shuttle explodes. Oh yeah. And so I was supposed to go on a camping trip, and it was a day like today, really, really cold. And so I was, I was in bed because I decided I'm going to sleep in and we'll go on the camping trip later in the day. And the phone was ringing off the hook, and it was before cell phones and all. So it was my phone. And I thought, it's got to be a wrong number. And I finally answered, what? And she said, you got to come in, you got to come in. And I remember wondering, what do you wear to the newsroom on a day like today? So of course, I wore black, and I'm driving down the street, and everybody on the street, people were just crying, bawling, and you all remember that day. It was pretty horrible. So yeah, we had every single person on staff standing around. Of course, a lot of times Martin can tell you there's nothing to do when you have that many people in the newsroom at a time like that, but it was very memorable and horrible.
Martin?
I think probably the tornadoes that hit, Sumter and Lake counties back in 2007. I think it was on, I think the 14-year anniversary was just a couple days ago. It was the Groundhog Day tornadoes, and those killed 22 people. The thing about tornadoes is that they tend to land, and then they go up, and then they land somewhere else. So, and this particular tornado, touched down over in the Villages in Sumter County, and then the storm clouds went up, and then it touched down again in a really very economically depressed area of Lake County over in Lake Mac. And I just by sheer luck and coincidence, I just happened to be over in that area of Lake County, when it hit, and within an hour, I was already there, and it was just really incredible to see the amount of devastation that that these tornadoes do cause. But I think that was probably one of the most memorable stories of worked on. I think another big story to impact this community was probably the Trayvon Martin. You know, many people don't realize this, but that was really the Trayvon Martin incident was really what started the Black Lives Matter movement. And that was just, you know, that was really something that brought a lot of national attention to not just Seminole County, but also Sanford.
So, you know, talk a lot about press releases. Everybody, you know, says, hey, we got to have a bunch of press releases. How many press releases do you get on a day or a week?
Probably a day, about 20 or 30. I get a lot of emails. You know, it's quite a significant amount, but they mostly all come from emails. I think, you know, what a lot of people ask is what really draws your attention to read the whole press release.
You asked, that's my next question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll jump ahead of you.
No, go ahead, Martin.
I think the one thing that reporters always look for in a press release is within the first sentence, just give the who, what, where, and when, and why. Just give all the information up at the top. But the other thing is especially with a newspaper which has more reporters covering, you know, different beats. For example, we do have a reporter that covers the retail industry in Central Florida, and we also have a reporter that covers the restaurant industry in Central Florida. And so if, for example, somebody sends us a press release saying that a new restaurant is opening or the new dining establishment is opening and they send it to me, I cover mostly government, so I can't really do anything very much with it. So one thing I would recommend or advise is that if you are sending a press release to a news agency, try to find out which is the reporter that actually covers that. And then send it to them. But then in the first or second sentence, just put, you know, why is this important? But like I was saying before, one of the stories that really appeals to us, that really grabs our attention, is something that does have an impact for the whole community.
Jeff, how many press releases, pitches do you get a day, a week?
Probably about 100, but it's a lot of times the press releases are from national companies that are trying to get us interviews with like Dr. Oz and stuff like that, which we would never do at you know, the local level here. But I do get a fair amount from different organizations asking to cover events, and I try to cover as many as I can. It's so hard, and our news is more geared towards like investigative and stuff, so we don't cover too many of that. They do try to sneak some in because we do have a lot of like time to fill every once in a while. And a lot of times if I find something that's interesting that a business is doing, if it's new, if it's unique, I will try to push to do a story on that company and highlight it. So, but it all depends on, you know, whether or not it's something that people would be interested. Like if I say, well, will people in Seminole County care about this? I'll pitch it, and then the masses of producers that I have to pitch it to will all decide whether or not they like it. So it's like Shark Tank in the morning. It really is.
Diane?
That's funny. Well, like Jeff, I get a lot. I'm the editor and publisher, so I get a lot of press releases that are junk, basically, and not from our community. They come from outside the community. They are things where, you know, oh, you're a business magazine, so I'll send it to you. And we cover Orange, Osceola, Seminole, Lake counties, and a little bit of Brevard. We're called I-4, so our dream is to stretch all the way across the I-4 corridor, but we don't do that yet. And so I get probably 20 to 25 pitches on most days from people in the community, and they are excellent. And I have to say, we get some really, really good story ideas. So if any of you out there are the people who send them to me, thank you for doing that. We get some great ideas.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and they are. That's right, Alan, you're one of them. And so, you know, what I really love is not just a press release, but something, and Alan is a great example, where it says, hey, Diane, I've got this great story idea for you. And then the email is just a quick email that tells me why. And then here's a press release with more information. You know, I don't have to have that press release, but that email telling me why is the most important thing.
you know, one of the things when I was a reporter back in the days when we had faxes and press releases would come in faxes, people would send press releases to everybody in the newsroom, and they would be on my beat. So everybody in the newsroom put the stack of press releases on my desk, and it was frustrating. So one of the things that, you know, as a PR person, you have to know, target who you're talking to. I would never send a story idea to Jeff that's happening in Kissimmee. Just wouldn't do it. I'd send it to whoever's covering the Kissimmee. Same thing with Martin. That's one of the key issues, is really developing, if you're, whatever industry you're in, figuring out who those reporters are that are on your beat and developing that relationship. So instead, so they, you know, and I also don't try and, you know, you guys don't hear from me unless it's something I think you would actually enjoy or be interested in. So you don't send them constant barrages of stuff. That's the other mistake that a lot of people do. Let's go back to the beginning. How's the business changed since you first started? And Jeff, let's start with you.
It's changed pretty dramatically from when I started in the 90s, and that was on sort of the end of the golden age of TV that started to go downward at that point. But you know, it's less people, it's younger people. You know, a lot of times the older people, they either get out of the business nowadays because the pay isn't very good if you want to move up. But it's more a game for the younger. Plus, not only do we have to be on TV, but we have to be on like Facebook and Twitter and everything else that comes along with it, even if you don't like it. So some people are not a fan of the social sites doing all that, but it's part of the game now, and you have to play the game. I would say, you know, a lot of stations are doing more. The reporters are doing more. They're not just reporting, they're shooting their video. There's several reporters here in this market that are driving around with their own equipment. They go out, they shoot their stories, they edit it, they write it, and they have to be on the air. So probably about 10, 15 years ago, that was never the case. It was usually a reporter and a photographer team.
Martin, why don't you also talk about the click factor and being online as part of this as well, and how this has changed? Because I know we were talking about how you used to know what was really being read.
Yeah, all of us up here, I think the newspaper industry, as you all know, has really changed a lot especially over the past 20 years. And you know, with the internet, I think we were talking about this just a few minutes ago. You know, before the internet, newspapers just pretty much printed their product and distributed it out to the community. And we really had no idea. Well, we had very little idea, if any at all, what kind of stories people were reading, and you know, what are the stories that generated interest within the community. Now with the internet, we're able to, and this is one example of how our industry and the newspaper industry has changed, is now we're able to determine and see what are the stories that people are reading, and what are the stories that people are trending to, or which stories are trending. For example, we're able to find out, or we're able to see, you know, how many clicks, so to speak, a story gets. And we're also able to determine of those clicks, of those people clicking on those stories, whether they're brand new people that have never been to our website before, and whether they're people that are subscribers to our website and that keep coming back. So we're able to see, you know, which stories tend to draw new people onto our website, and those that, you know, keep those people, those subscribers onto our website. When you say the clickbait, you know, we tend to focus on stories that, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, for example, right now, the stories that are really trending very well for us, and I'm sure this is the same for both of you, especially you, Jeff, is stories about where to get a vaccine. Any story we put up about where to get a vaccine generates a tremendous amount of, you know, interest in people clicking on it. Over the past 2 or 3 years, the stories that you know, the Sentinel in Seminole County has written about that have tended to draw a lot of interest was the River Cross development over in East Seminole County. Those stories tended to generate a lot of people clicking on those. Also, any of the stories about the former Seminole County tax collector. Those also tended to draw a lot of interest. So that's one of the ways that the industry has changed, is that we're now able to see, you know, which stories interest our community.
Diane?
Well, I think I'm older than probably both of these gentlemen. So I've been around for a while, and I was there when the great USA Today experiment happened, and stories had to be held to the front page of the section, except for one story was allowed to jump to another page, because they said people do not want to read long articles anymore, and it's only gotten worse or better, however you look at it. But I think people's attention spans are so small. And so even in my magazine, we have articles that are 2 and 3 pages long, and we're so delighted when people say they read it all the way to the end, But we try to do things that are kind of short bites, short hits, and yes, social media is really important to get out those news nuggets or little things that you want to get out to people. And we are constantly measuring, just like these guys are at their news organizations, trying to figure out what are people reading. So it's very interesting. It's like trying to catch a ping pong ball bouncing across a parking lot every day.
We're getting close to wrapping up, so I want to make sure that everybody has time for questions. I've got one more question, especially you folks on Zoom. If you could put it in the comments, somebody can text me and let me know if there's any questions on Zoom. But I'm going to do one more question for me, and then I'm going to open up to questions from the audience. So we have approximately, this is one of our largest attended Good Morning Seminoles since we started doing them in August, second only to UCF President Cartwright. Where's Maritz at? So that went well. This is second only to that. We got about 175 people here. So each one of them are going to pitch you right after this. What advice would you give each one of them to get their story told? Diane, let's go ahead and start with you.
I think I already kind of said it. Just send an email. You can send it to press@i4biz.com or Diane@i4biz. It's biz.com. And the key is to say why this goes in my magazine or our magazine. Why is this important for the readers of our area?
Let me just, that's one thing that I really want to make sure everybody knows when you're talking about pitching people. Read the publication before you pitch. I mean, you'd be surprised at how many people have never read the Sentinel that come in, or the I4 Business magazine. They say, "Hey, please do a story on it." It's one of the real keys that if you know the publication that you're pitching to, you can determine whether it's an actual story for them or not. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Jeff.
Say, yeah, there we go. I would say, just, make sure that you send a press release. We do read all of these press releases. You might think, oh, they're never going to read this, or they'll just throw it away. But we do read all the press releases, but make sure it just stands out, because there's a lot of press releases that I get from some of these little neighborhood community organizations, and I show up and they're like, oh, wow, like you're here. We weren't expecting anybody. Well, no, you sent me a press release. I really liked what you said. And we show up. So just make it catchy and try to explain why people here in Seminole or where you are care.
You know what? I'm going to add on that one as well, because one of the benefits of being a member of the Seminole Chamber is that we run all your press releases in our newsletter. And if you've never written a press release before, reach out to me. We'll help you write your first one, and make sure, and you're free to give it to these guys as well if you want. But that's one of the things that you get as a member benefit that relatively few people take advantage of. So my email is on the website. You can just reach out to me and I can help you out with those first news, with that first press release. Martin.
I would say and it probably goes with you guys too, the press releases that really draw our attention are those that say, wow, this is really interesting. This is something that, that our readers would be really interested in learning about. Or maybe a company has a product that would have a big impact on the community or on the region. That's something that would draw our interest too. But the big advice I would give is just, even give me a call or give anybody a call in our newsroom and say, hey, who is the reporter that covers this industry that I work in, whether it's, for example, the retail industry, the restaurant industry, hospitality. Who's the reporter that covers this? Because we got this thing going on, or we got this new product, And, you know, we'd like to pitch it to the Sentinel as a story. And I'd be happy to tell you who it is, you know, just reach out to us. But, you know, as Alan said, you know, just be familiar with the publication you're pitching it to, and then try to find out who the reporter is that covers that industry. That way your press release will be more direct.
All right, do we have any questions from the audience? I got plenty to go. Haven't got one. All right, go ahead and say it.
Is there a limitation on what is actually aired? Oftentimes, a news channel will come to cover the news, but it never airs. What happens there?
All right, so the question is, your reporter comes out, you think there's going to be a great story, and then it disappears. So what happens there on television as well? And that happens in the press, and you know, stories get killed all the time. But go ahead, Jeff, talk about that. Start out with.
Depends on what the story's about. Sometimes because of TV, they get cut for time. Some other reporter's story goes longer, or an interview goes longer than expected during the newscast, and they end up killing the story for time, basically. If a reporter comes out and does the story, and then they call their bosses, their producers, and they say, hey, here's what this story is about, and they go, I don't know if I like that anymore. Sometimes they will just kill the story. Also, stories get killed because they're not credible. You know, we do a lot of research behind the scenes that you guys don't see, but we do a lot of checking up on things to make sure that they match, you know, that they're facts. And if the facts don't match, then we kill the story.
I will tell you, I've had 3 press conferences that I thought were going to get a lot of news, and then a plane crashed 3 times that day. That basically something bigger happens, your news story goes away. Martin, talk about when stories get killed.
Well, what happens a lot in the newspaper industry is that we write what are called enterprise stories that really don't have a news to it, that there's not something that's happening immediately, or it's not something breaking, but it's something, enterprise stories are mostly stories that can hold for a while, you know, that just have or they're more called evergreen stories that can, you know, can run whenever, can publish whenever. So I've had stories that, you know, I've written it and my editors read it and it's all ready to go. However, they've held it for, you know, sometimes it's the stories have held for months. So, but I've never really had a situation where a story's been killed, where the story has been written and it's edited, and then they say, then the publisher or the editor-in-chief says, no, we're not going to run that story. It's never happened to me. I'm not saying it's never happened to any other reporter, but usually what happens in our industry is that stories do get held. And so you interview people, and then the people you interviewed say, hey, when's this story that I talked to you about going to run? And what happens is sometimes it you know, takes days or weeks or months.
Diane?
Same.
Okay.
Print is quite different. Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions from the audience? Oh, go ahead, Brian.
So what would you recommend for like a young college student to break into business like journalism nowadays opposed to like, you know, 30 years ago?
For newspaper or for TV?
The question is, what advice would you give for a young college student or high school student that wants to break into the business, both for print and TV? Diane, why don't you go?
Experience counts for everything. So I know when I was in high school, I would write stories and send them to the St. Pete Times, and they would laugh at me and think, you know, we're not going to run that. You're just a kid. And one time I got something in, woo. And it was just something about a really popular band at my high school. So experience is important, and just keep trying it. The other thing is when you're in college, when you're in high school, when you're in junior college, or you know, whatever you're doing, just keep writing and pitching stories, and try to get an internship wherever you can, whether it's paid or unpaid. It's the experience that matters. And there are so many people out there today who are writing on the internet, writing their own blogs or doing whatever, and they don't go through any kind of fact checking that we go through, all that kind of thing. And you know, I highly it's hard for us as journalists to take, because there's so much stuff out there that's not factual. When we go to journalism school, we have to take classes on law, journalism law, and understand what libel is all about and what slander is all about and what not to write as much as what to write. So, so that educational component is really important too. And that's why I think a lot of companies require you to have some kind of education in journalism before they'll hire you.
Anybody else?
For college or a high school student that wants to get into this, I would say just have just a general curiosity about the world. You know, just really just see that the world is this great, big, interesting place, and that you know, and that if you do want to get into journalism, I think that the best reporters are those people who just have that general curiosity about life and about not just but the whole community, and to also try to read as much as you can different publications. You know, just no matter where on the political spectrum it is, just just try to read a variety of stuff. But that's the basic advice I would give. Just have and I think all of us, all reporters, everybody that works in the media, just a healthy appetite, curiosity for the world. If you're getting into now, if you decide to get into newsprint journalism, I wouldn't recommend getting a degree in journalism, so to speak. I would probably get more of a degree in something more specialized, something, you know, like maybe even political science, you know, or if you want to be a medical reporter, get into biology. You know, our medical reporter, Nassim Miller, she has a degree in biology, not necessarily journalism. I got into it. I have a degree in business. I started out with a business degree. So, but that's the advice I would give. But also, like Diane said, just, I mean, if you want to get into print journalism, just write as much as you can, and just, you know, and pitch stuff to, you know, to different publications. And the fact is if you pitch 100 stuff, 100 times, you're probably going to get rejected 99 times. And you just gotta, you know, just come to that. You can't get discouraged by it.
We got time for one more question.
Oh, did you want Jeff to answer?
Oh, Jeff, well, we can let you. Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
I always tell them, why are you getting into this business? Get a backup, because you don't want to be in this
You're
business.
not going to make very much money.
Yeah, you're not going to make much
Doesn't
money.
pay well.
Yeah, it does not pay well at all. I think my first job, I was lucky I got 20,000, but a lot of people were making like 15,000 out of college at their first job in TV. But most kids, they just want to be on TV. But yeah, you have to be curious, and you have to care about the subjects that you're covering every day to want to make it into this business. And one of the perks of the job is I've been able to help people over the years who've had issues, who've had problems, and we've helped to solve those problems for them and get them help, which is one of the best feelings, that you're making a difference in helping people.
Christina, one last question, right?
Yes, one last Zoom question, and it is, I have a group of teens who would be interested in meeting and learning some tips, maybe a seminar. Are any of you interested in participating in inspiring these youth?
Do y'all want to inspire today's youth? No, they have a group of teens that would love to hear from you guys. At some
Sign
point in
me
time.
up for sure.
Sure, I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, I would definitely be willing to do it. My wife teaches TV production to middle school students in Longwood, so always happy to help.
There you go. Guys, let's give these folks a nice big round of applause. And you are welcome to take your seats back. I think Rebecca's around the corner. I'll let her come on up here.
Thank you guys so much. Before we do our door, I have a few quick announcements. First, if you are a guest this morning, please see Christina over here. Before you leave the building, if you join the chamber, she will credit your ticket price back to you. We also have some great events coming up. You have flyers that were at your seats. The next Seminole Chamber Crush will be at Oz Asian on the 9th. We'll also be visiting Oviedo Brewing Company on the 18th. If you haven't come to a crush, we hope you can join one of those. State of the County at the end of the month is sold out for in-person, but we do still have virtual seats available. Please also remember that due to restrictions, all our events, even council events, are registration required. So please register early. Thank you to our sponsors, Topgolf, Next Horizon, J. Winkler Company, Stanford Orlando Kennel Club, Waste Pro, and the Orlando Law Group for sponsoring. We also thank you, Lewis, for being our AV sponsor and taking care of Zoom. Thank you to GS Cats for our amazing photos, as always. Thank you to the Lake Mary Event Center, and thank you to Jessica for giving you a free display table at next month's GMS, and that goes to Amanda Meadows. Right back there, so you can see Jessica, and she'll take care of you. Have a great Seminole County day.